Good afternoon, everybody. I know I meant to start this morning, but I thought it was better to do a few things first. So, for example, as we know yesterday, I introduced you to my brown square pattern, which looks like it'll be far better on camera. So, once we get to the bottom, which imminently will happen, I have now pricked half the square. Now, you may recall it works out as something like, I think we worked it out as nearly 3,700 pinpricks. Well, I've done half of them. It takes a while. For those who were curious, because I said basically you watch a crap film or a really good film you already have seen 1,000 times, I watched Alien Covenant because, well, it's a film, and it, hey, let's land on a planet like 100 miles away from the actual thing we want to look at. Even though there's nothing between it and us, we will then have to take like a 3-hour drive to get to it. But suddenly you've only got 15 minutes to get back. I'm sorry, what? And, oh look, it turns out to be a spaceship. Oh, please, people. I mean, let's face it, the only good thing about that film is pretty much everybody dies. Well, technically, everybody dies. So, let's be honest here. That's really the best part of the film, because they deserved it. Right, so, this afternoon, we are going to make a belted and conceited effort to get our way to the bottom corner of my triangle, while swearing at the cursed bobbins, because, well, swearing is a thing, you may have noticed. And then we can talk, then we can have a look at it, laugh at all the mistakes, or cry is more accurately for me, and decide if this is to be the one. And if it's not to be the one, what would we change? Because we did a lot of thinking before we did this. So this was never going to be a fast process. There will be a lot of streams along the way. And yeah, it's going to be a long time, but I do want to document it, and hopefully some of you want to share along in the ways of doing it. And I was about to do something. Oh, I know what it was. I'm cold. That's what it was. As I said yesterday, I've come to the conclusion that a lot of the mistakes I've made are slightly stress-induced, but also down to the spangles, because those spangles just annoy the crap out of me. So I'm going to turn my heating on for a little bit to take some of the chill out of it. I haven't officially turned on my heating this year, but I do occasionally put it on for half an hour or so just to, well, stop it being quite so nippy, because I know this is not entirely normal. I, for example, have a pint of Coke next to me that's been in the fridge, right? I cannot hold that glass, well, it's a plastic cup, because, well, plastic does not transmit heat and stuff as well as some other things. I can't get things out the fridge without being in immense pain, because it really hurts me. And I've always been like this. I can't even peel potatoes that you've stored in the fridge because it really hurts. Which was a problem as a child. Peel these potatoes. Yes, Mum. Ow. You haven't even got halfway through the first one yet. And it's because they're cold. And so I get cold hands. And obviously, just having cold hands does not induce necessarily the same level of pain. But it does mean they get stiff and really uncomfortable. So, eating on, time to do this. So, here we go. This is where we left off yesterday. I covered up a few bits because we were about to embark on the cloth stitch part, where I thought I'd really screwed up. Yesterday, we established I possibly haven't. Quite surprising, but I possibly haven't. And you may also remember yesterday, ads, really? I shall wait for the ads. waiting for ads. Ads are done. So, you may recall, and in fact, I will share this. I do need to adjust some of my... There it is. You may recall, yesterday we made this hideous mess. Now, this looks like some form of alien kind of instructions. And we should have 6 bobbins according to this, because we are in the leftmost corner of that first zig or zag, whichever way you think they work. But we're at that first corner on the outside. I have 5. Now yesterday we worked out that this was likely right, because if you look at the sections on the right hand side of that, you start at 2 and then you get to one where you add 1 and take it away. Now this, she says looking again, this is the worker. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there are 1, 2, 3 on the outside. So if I discard 1, we have 1 too short. So we are possibly 1 short. However, I'm not quite sure what we can do about it, because there wouldn't be 1 added on the inside. We have added 1 all the way across. And it's not like bobbins can go for a walk. It's not like knitting stitches where, well, they can, run away. So, I'm looking at here. So we went, and I know you can't see my mouse, so mind you at the moment, nor can I, so don't worry about that. 2, 3, 4, 5. Would have been 6 when you pinned it and then you lose 1, so that's 5, which made that right. Then you go across and add 1. Hang on. No one. So that would be 6, 5, 6, 5. Should be 6. Definitely would be pin 6, lose 1, 5. We've already got 5, but we can't not lose any. So we will just have to carry on regardless, really. Because, well, there's nowhere to invent them from. And this pair here come into the first pin on the right on the way back. So wherever they went is a really good question. But yesterday we were adamant we had this right, which is why we drew the hideous picture, and I've just realised I haven't swapped screens again. I did this a lot yesterday. I'm not paying enough attention, and now stopping in this is a bad idea. So you are the travelling pair. You've just gone over, over, and you are well too short. Pinity pin. But now I've got 6. But I'm about to lose 1. So, yeah, whatever. Hang on. 1 out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, that is right. See, this is what we did for that whole section yesterday. And for those who survived the watching my brain melt, a bit like watching the tally, to be honest, because that really was painful to watch, I'm sure. Watching a grown woman really struggle with under over. But never mind. We're stealing pins, not getting pins out of other places. So, if we can complete this today, this will be great. because if I can finish this afternoon, this corner of the triangle, and because there's less and less of it, it speeds up. We can unpin it. Well, do something with the ends. Not quite sure what we're going to do with the ends, because really not quite sure what we're going to do with those ends. But we can do something so that we can pull the triangle off, put it on a dark background for you guys, so you can have a good look at it, and we can decide, is this the triangle of our dreams? Or my dreams, more accurately, because you won't have to live with it. And the fact that I'm already planning a second net curtain is a good sign, because it means that despite these hideous spangles driving me insane, I have not yet given up the idea of the net curtain. Which, clearly, you know, quite often when you start big projects, you're like, yeah, want to do it. Then your brain goes, actually, it's like, see, you know, driving to the bottom of a mountain and going, oh, the view will be great from the top, because it will be great from the top. You know, no one's within a doubt of that. And you start off at the bottom, and then you realise you've got a stone in your shoe, and now you've got a bit of a blister, and, well, you're only, you know, like half an hour into it. And, you know, your brain's going, can we not? So, you know, sometimes we really want to do something, really do, and then kind of, actually, yeah, we shouldn't be doing this. We're too old for this shit. You know, so, but I'm still really keen on doing my net curtain, and surprising the heck out of me, I got some post today, and in the post, a handwritten invoice for the bolster pillar that I want, and saying, you know, if you agree, you know, it's kind of a pro forma one, but, you know, if you agree, send money to, and we'll already be working on it. So, because obviously they sell enough of them that they can start on one, and, you know, if I don't have it, someone else will. And there was a bit of me kind of going, so you mailed all about me in an email, and then you sent me a snail mail invoice to pay you, when you could have just sent an email and I'd have sent the money, like, you know, 10 minutes later. Okay. I mean, I know obviously the final thing's going to come in the post because, well, it's a physical object, but it seemed it seemed a very odd way of doing it, is to have an online shop that's not entirely a shop, it's more of a catalogue, and then normally you're supposed to email the list of things that you want. So I effectively did that, and then they send you a physical piece of paper to say your total's going to be this, can you pay it? And you're like, just email it, dude. I mean, I have a man. Well, I don't have a man. I know a man, and he comes and does my gardening, because, well, I am the Antichrist of plants. The more I like it, the quicker it dies. So I don't touch plants, generally, because, well, they die very, very quickly, and as I say, the more I like it, the quicker it's dead. I mean, when I was married, me and husband went to the garden centre, and we bought a magnolia tree, because they are very pretty. We reckon it was dead before we'd even got the quarter of a mile home. It just seemed to be dead already, you know. I mean, it was still green when we bought it, but pretty much 2 days later it had kind of... I mean, it was a reasonable sized tree, when, you know, that we bought. I mean, it was taller than we were. So it was, it's not like we bought, half a twig in a tub. We bought a reasonable sized tree. It was, a small tree, but it was a reasonable sized tree. I've got a tree out the front of my garden that's still smaller than that tree was, right? And and it didn't grow. We dug it. Well, mainly he dug, but we between us did. I'm sure I did put some effort in, but we dug the hole, much swearing and sweating. Buried this thing in the front garden. Yeah. It couldn't have died quicker if we'd put it in poison. It really couldn't. And we'd spent a fortune on it. This was the story of our life. The only plants we ever really bought that did well. A honeysuckle in the back garden. That went fucking nuts. That really did go nuts. One of those Christmas bushes that has dark green leaves, but the very, very new ones are red. Poinsettias, but ours never flowered, so I'm not quite sure. But it was a garden bush, not necessarily an in-the-house bush. And butterfly bushes, buddleias. Oh, those things grow like stink. Those things would grow on a slab of concrete, as they do actually on my patio. So, but my old house, where we lived when we were married, we liked butterfly bushes because we like butterflies, and so for whichever wedding anniversary's plants, I bought a buddleia bush that we could put out the front in memory of our joyous union that pretty much died that year, but never mind. We went to put it in the front garden because we didn't think we had any, and well, we put it in between the two buddleia bushes. It was the story of our lives. But that buddleia bush grows really well. When I mean really, really well, that buddleia bush, if hacked down to kind of ground level at about this time of year, by summer will be taller than the house, if you let it. Right? So, it likes it there, it really does. But, yeah. But that was such the story of our lives. Hey, we really like buddleia bushes. You don't see many around here, says us. We'll get one and stick it in the garden, says us. So we did. Yeah, between two more. Only us. Only we could do that. Yeah, only we could do that. So yes. Hey, Naughty Cat. How are things coming along? Well, funny you should ask. Can't entirely see, so if I backpedal a little bit, we are getting down to the bottom of my triangle. We only have, she says, trying to angle it, and it's all off centre and not square, and I'm not OCD, but it's not square. This little bit to go, and this is a good thing. This is distinctly a good thing. We like that we are making progress, because we're hating the spangles with more passion with every moment. But we did a bit of an experiment yesterday where we looked at a slightly different stitch for the inner crossy bit in the middle. If I zoom in, you can't really see it. There is a way I can improve that for you. Hang on, bear with me one moment as I go and find a thing. Thank you for that, dog. The dog just rammed me in the butt. If I go, it looks horrible, so bear with me, but it does help you see the white threads more. So, chunk. So, as you can see, as I say, it looks pretty horrible, but we tried a different stitch down the bottom here. Now, it looks a little messy as a video, and it looks like it's a bit fudgy there, but it's kind of not. In reality, they look like little kind of ovals in a kind of that orientation with a cross in the middle. So this removes the potential fly hole in the middle, and so nothing can pass through it, retaining its net curtain effect. Let's remove that filter because the worms just. It's TV static, but I call them worms. Because it looks like worms kind of doing its thing. So let's angle it down a bit more because I want you to see what we're doing. So we are making considerable progress, and hopefully today, by the end of this stream, and the less I talk and the more I do, the sooner we will get to the bottom. And just check I didn't put that in the wrong hole. No, that was the right hole. So the sooner we get to the corner, we can pull all the rest of the pins out. We can have a look at it, and we can decide whether or not this is the square of choice. And I've got a brown square. Let me go get my brown square a sec. Hang on, let me mute things because I will make a lot of noise. Oops, I dropped everything. The moment I hit unmute, I dropped everything. Hang on. Where's my push gun? It's made a dive under the sofa. Let me go on mute again 1 second, sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. They make every single tool with round handles. So this is my pusher. It's got a round handle. So every time you put it on everything, unless it is 100% absolutely perfectly level and you put it down with no momentum, it just kind of buggers off the side and rolls underneath things. And in this case, it rolled under the couch. So hence there was going to be grunting and swearing. So as I said, the brown square. While green stroke light blue square is very traditional, for me, I know that it makes it hard for you to see. So, I, through random chance, got sent a pattern on some card. And instead of the card being the usual kind of, some are even yellow, the random card, and yellow would be awful, I got sent it on a piece of brown card. And it was like recycled brown. It was kind of like the Amazon box brown, right? And, well, the black printing still shows pretty well. So, well, don't that look better? And so, if I then take a piece of white thread, because I have the spool to hand, lay it across, even zoomed out, the white shows more. If I zoom in now, look how much more the white stands out, right? So, for the actual making of the curtain, I've only punched half the holes, but we will have a darker background that absorbs a little bit more light, but it's still very easy for me to see the pattern and the holes and all the things that I need to see, because much as I want you to all to enjoy it, I've still got to be able to work with it. It's got to be practical for me. So one obvious answer would be, of course, we'll make the net curtain from black. It would stand out quite a lot. I don't want a black net curtain. Well, at least I don't think I do. I don't want neck curtains to me are white, so I kind of need it to be white, or at least nearly white. So it is that kind of. I think you are to be leaving. Yes, you are to be leaving. It is that kind of problem. Is that I want it to be. Yeah, see, that's it. I want it to be. So we have found a solution to that kind of problem. And while I explained this yesterday, I used to do a lot of streaming. In fact, I did a lot of hours of streaming when I used to play a particular game, which is why I have this streaming account in the first place. But I was streaming a game. So all I had to do was fire up my game, log in, hit go, and, well, to start with, I didn't even talk over the top because I can't bear the sound of my own voice. I sound like a suicide hotline victim, right? I sound like someone who should be phoning in because they're going to leap off a bridge. And so I don't like my accent, even though when I speak normally, I don't feel I have one. The moment I listen to myself, I sound hideous. Oh my God, I sound so hideous. So I don't like the sound of my own voice. It's part of the reason I live alone, I think. And so the whole streaming thing. No, exactly. Now, one thing I will say, Naughty Kel, is that you can add an element of colour. So, for example, if we think of my thing here, if these zigzags were to have subtle colour or a shiny thread in them, that could work as a net curtain because it's really subtle. But net curtains are white. It's just like the law or something. Net curtains are white. So while you could get away with a tiny bit of colour, I mean, for example, I have found a lace-making pillow that would allow me to make my net curtain in one piece. Now, the number of bobbins could make you cry, so it would not be this style of lace, right? It would not. Well, it would kind of be, but not. I would use thicker thread, and there is this current kind of tradition of making scarves using a technique, and so I might do that. But instead of just having spiders, bear in mind I don't like spiders, but just having spiders all the way over, I might do filled in little cloth-stitch diamonds where a spider could have been. And if they were coloured, so you would have the general thing and a slight little coloured diamond, you could do a few of those and it would potentially look okay. Yeah, I think I've had a few curtains with that problem, because I have curtains for my patio doors, especially in my old house. I'm pretty convinced that let's just say there's a watermark up the inside. I think that's the kindest way. Dogs are evil like that sometimes, because especially depending on the colour of your curtain. I mean, my old house had, quote, wine-coloured curtains. If your wine was that colour, you would not be drinking it because it would look like someone had added a pound of flour to it. Because, of course, well, it's not transparent. But it was roughly the shade of wine if you mixed in cornflour starch, for example. And, but, as you say, because mine were dark, oh, I won't say dark, but they were a plainish, darkish colour, you would not have seen if someone had felt the urge in the night to decorate them, or at least while you're not looking. Until, of course, far too late. Now, I'm sure, judging by that statement, I'm sure you have the same problem I do, is that you never find it the moment they've just done it, so you can clear it up. You only find the sin once it's really set in its ways, So, yeah, I love my dogs. I do truly and utterly love my dogs. Mainly when they're asleep, because they're not doing anything bad, but I do love my dogs. But we are getting towards the bottom of the whole triangle, and one thing that we will have to decide when we start again, because of course we will be starting again, and in fact even when we get them all right we will still be starting again, we need to decide what bobbins we're going to use. And my mind's still preying heavily on that one. So ooh, that reminds me. No, I'll do that later. Right. So, do 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 do, because you should have backed off. Right. Pin. Tension. So how are you, in general? It's been a few days since we spoke, so how are you? No, that's right. I understand that feeling. I have some news that I am not sure how much of it I can share, but let's just say 2 of my co-workers are deeply stressed. I thought I was doing all right. I thought, it was on my mind, but I thought I was handling it pretty well. Till I saw just how many mistakes I've made in this triangle, and clearly, other than the spangles, I think a lot of it is the spangles, because they disrupt the flow and interrupt you, and a bit like you when you're doing your crossings over of your let's call them threads for want of a better word, but your rope threads, that if you've crossed a few and you're about to take a handful and something interrupts you, you now have to reevaluate what the hell you were doing and where you've got to, because, well, your brain's now farted and gone off and done something else. And so I think the spangles are probably more the cause of the mistakes, because I keep having to stop and fanning around with spangles, and they get stuck on things, and mainly themselves, and all of that. But I also think my event of the day, mainly the last, well, technically it's been going on since July, but this week has been epic, and I think one of my co-workers might actually be signed off with stress soon, so it is that epic, that it is not helping for sure, and so I do relate to the stressful week, and frankly the fact that it's now the weekend, hello frickin' Lulia, so happy about that. Now this seems awfully high up. Am I sure I didn't miss a pin? Adverts. So I'm not taking the path down this cloth stitch that I should have been. I have managed to work it the wrong way round somehow. But again, test. Again, yet another frigging mistake. So never mind. So we're not quite working this in the order that I meant, in that I am now in this bottom corner here. There. Which is fine. But it should be going to this pin, but it's actually going to that pin. So it's not quite the angle of choice, but as we're not using this and we're ditching it right here, right now, there are worse things in life. It was just, there are definitely worse things in life. So, I don't need you anymore. You are forever gone. You are completed. You get stabbed. Twisty, twisty. Twisty, twisty. You come back this way. And you go out. So it all adds up in the end. Look. It all works out in the end. You are now done. And we're at the corner with the right number of bobbins. Fucking hallelujah. Right. Ta-da! So, as I say, works out in the end. So, you three are done. Let's hyper-lengthen you so we can push you into the reject pile hidden underneath this cloth, because we will never be using them again and cutting them off. No, spangle. These are called Midlands bobbins. The spangle is this irritating pile of beads that sit on the end and catch on everything and are the source of much of my swearing. The actual bobbins aren't really the problem. I mean, if I ripped all the spangles off, I'd probably be fine. They'd be a bit light and they'd roll around a lot, but that's what bobbins do. But yeah, spangles and me, I don't know whether it's the autistic brain cell or just the fact that I hate spangles. Maybe I just friggin' hate spangles. So they're all done. Yeah, I need you. So, right. Onwards and upwards. Let's cover you up because you're the reject pile. And we can put you around here because we won't be using you for a while. I'm sure in your own craft you see a lot of this. Everything has a really dumb name. You know, when they were inventing names for these things, some of the names actually are quite reasonable. You know, I'm not saying they're all stupid. But for example, when you weave it, when you spin, if you spin yarn, if you make your own wool, you have a bobbin, that's fine. We get bobbins. I mean, it's a slightly odd word, but, you know, we'll go with bobbin. It's not, you know. The bobbin sits on a spindle. Fine, we don't have a problem with spindle. The spindle and stuff sits on your mother of all. I'm sorry, what? Your mother of all. Your mother of all is rotating round by the footman. And you're like, where did you get these names from? With weaving, you have shafts, because they go up and down. You have treadles. That's fine. But you then have a shed. It's not a shed. You and I, for the word shed, picture a small wooden thing in the corner of your garden. No, this is the tunnel in which you throw your shuttle. Tunnel would have been a better name. So, there is a lot of these things in crafting where you sitting there going, you sat round the fire when there were some interesting herbs on it, didn't you? You really did when you came up with these names. Because, of course, here we are hundreds of years later, still using these dumb names for things. So, yes, these bobbins are called Midlands bobbins, but they have spangles. So, on the homeward straight, guys, we are doing the last ground bit of triangle. Oh, I can't see to find the pinhole. That is. So we are on the home straight. And this is a good thing. So yes, we will technically get up a bit of speed. Well, mainly also aim helped by the fact that every row I do, there's one less. Well, technically there's one more, because I'm going down, but there are... It's not like it's square, so... I did pin that, idiot. Yeah, I pinned that. Right. I don't have my other bobbins to hand, I put them back where they came from. But for example, this is a mega chunky one. I have a style, like a lot of things, I mean, you use your hands for yours, so it's not quite the same, but I'm sure even like the rope, you have rope preferences and all the rest of it, which is not something people give a lot of thought to. Yes, the different names for exactly things. And for me, one of the most infuriating things of all, above all else, is how if you're knitting, you do like chunky, well, extra chunky, sports, Aran double knitting, sock, lace, and then lace encompasses everything from kind of below sock and down to kind of, well, frankly, this if you were insane. If you crochet, they have this arbitrary kind of numbering system that just makes no sense to anybody. If you're weaving, they have the one, and the one determines, and the one is a bit like a calorie. Someone declared this as the one, and everything else is measured by quantities of the one. So an 8-2 cotton is 8 times longer than the original per weight, so depending on whether it's new or old, so imperial or metric, but there are ones per each, so whether it's a pound or a kilo, but so the one was, say, and it's not like, 1 metre or 10 metres or something, no, it is a pound of fluff that was spun, and it measured X, and then if it's 8 times that, well, it's 8 times longer, but made from the same amount of weight. Therefore, it's not 8 times thinner, because that would be easy. It's because, of course, that's not how cylinders work, and so that's 8 4, and the 4 of that means there are 4 of them twisted together. So all of weaving is always measured in relevance to the one, and there's 1 per fibre type. In lace making, they kind of use a bit of a mix. So you can use pretty much anything, but in essence, it's more of the as a whole. So this is 40. You probably can't see it, but if I find it the right way up, you possibly can see that, especially if I zoom up a bit, it says N40 at the top. That's because this is number 40. It's not the same as crochet 40, but it's number 40 weight. I have got some 40/2 cotton that is also for lace making, so they do steal kind of a bit from either, as long as it's really skinny, pretty much it's down. And you're just kind of like, pick a measurement, we'll all get used to it, and then, because of course, you can use knitting yarns for weaving, you can use crochet yarns for weaving, you can knit with crochet yarns, you can crochet with knitting yarns. So it's not like it's illegal, it's not like you can't use them. But as you've said, 300 names for the same knot. Seriously? I mean, get over it. But in terms of bobbin, basically every region, because obviously they didn't have the internet back then, picked a name, had different style bobbins. Now, some of it is because they had slightly different style pillows. So if you have a bolster pillow, the round ones, the kind of log ones, like bolster pillows for your couch, you don't need the spangles because the weight of the bobbin hangs off and weighs the thread down. So you don't need a spangle to help. Now, a lot of the spangle's job on a flat pillow is to stop it running around, but some of it is a little to do with weight, because they're usually glass beads, although these are all plastic, as far as I can tell. Some of them might be clay, but most of them are plastic. Pretty much, these are the only ones that have spangles. You can force spangles on anything, frankly. You drill a hole in it and put a spangle on it. You'd be nuts, because, I hate the spangles. So, this one is a mega chunky one, so do not try to laugh too much, because this one's like, almost like a comedy one, a bit like comedy glasses. This is a mega chunky, and sadly is missing half its base, but this is the style of bobbin that I really quite like. Now, normally, the tops are, a third of the diameter of that, so it is smaller. The bottom is smaller, but not hugely smaller, but it doesn't have these kind of like huge wings at the top. But I quite like these because of the size of them. They sit well in your hand. Obviously, this is a bit big, but these sit well in your hand, don't have spangles, and so I really quite like these. You have Danish ones, which are a bit more like swan necks, shall we call it. So they're similar in overall shape to this, in that there's a lip, a skinny bit, a lip, because most bobbins have that, and then kind of a much more tapered, but generally subtle. It bulbs at the bottom, but, it's like 2-3 millimeters difference, right? And has more of a mushroom top than a flat top. There are my Majorcan ones, which are kind of like these ones without the spangles on steroids, so they're just really chunky. The Honiton ones. The Honiton ones, oh my god, they make these look beefy, right? They are a bit shorter, they don't have spangles, and they are made like a... Exactly, it's a bit more my size too. I am not a delicate lady. I've never been a delicate lady. I'm not a lady, frankly, but I am female, but I'm not a lady. And so I do very much understand. I am chunky and delicate, and hence lace really shouldn't be my thing. But I enjoy making it. That's kind of the point. Hence, a lace curtain was about the only thing I could think of that I would have in my house. Because... I don't even really have pictures on the walls. I don't want flowers on my couch and my curtains and my clothes. And flowers belong in the garden. I don't even want them in the house because I'll kill them. So I live a very plain kind of existence. I don't do because I'm not extra skinny. In in fact, I make up for a couple of extra skinnies. I do not want patterns that you can count how many of them it takes to get across my chest, stroke, butt, stroke, whatever. Because the answer is more than there should be. That's all we need to know. My butt doesn't quite have time zones. I have seen people who make me think, Christ, I'm skinny. But, mainly because I watch my 600-pound life and feel better. But I have a fascination for my 600-pound life. And the genuine reason, I need to make sure I don't become one of them. Because it is well within my remit to become one of them. So I have to try and make sure that that doesn't happen. So I watch quite a lot of that because, well, I need to make sure it's not me. And quite often, I'm sorry, my 600-pound lifers. For all of you who've succeeded in getting down towards your ideal weight, good on you. For the rest of you, it's really not surprising. Because the number of times you watch that show and, oh, doctor, now, I don't know why I'm so fat. Your journey to see Doctor Now was, say, a day in the car. After half an hour of getting in the car, you stopped at the first fast food joint and ate a family pack of food. Within an hour, you were doing it again. My love, I hate to break it to you, this is why you're fat. And so I know fat shaming is not a thing, but if you're wondering why you're big, this is why. Now, I don't do that. I just have an incredibly sweet tooth, don't like fish, fruit and vegetables, and so it is not too surprising that I am larger than required. I am also quite sedentary, and so, to be honest, I know exactly why I'm large, and I make no beefs about it because, well, I can hardly pretend it. Yes! Now, if we were not sharing potentially with the entire nation, I would show you my, let's call it, problem area. I have what I lovingly call my shit pile. Now, my shit pile is, there is no food in my shit pile, so it is not unhealthy. It just looks like it should be. It does look like something from the hoarder shows, frankly. Now, I would class myself as a hoarder, but I am a more practical hoarder. So, as a generic rule, I would never be the... Well, I'd show you mine as long as you would signed an NDA kind of thing, right? I live alone for a reason, and I don't have visitors for a reason. But a lot of these hoarders show you get, you especially, no offense to the Americans, the hoarder shows from America, they have 50 years of newspapers. They have all of this stuff which is genuinely rubbish, right? Whereas my problem is, other than my shit pile, which has some Amazon envelopes in it, I'm just looking at my shit pile, and generally is actually, my shit pile is actually rubbish, but everywhere else I have more things than practical storage. So I've got, for example, a load of weaving yarn that I ordered and want and will use eventually, and that can be a problem, as I'm sure you are aware as a crafter. The future projects supplies, which really you arguably could have waited until you were actually ready to do the project, but you saw this thing that you really wanted to do, so you got it. Those kind of supplies are a problem. I mean, my lace stuff isn't too bad. The pile of lace pillows is a little excessive, but because you can only really use one at a time. Well, that's not true. I could have multiple projects on the go, but the truth of the matter is, realistically, you probably only really need one of them at a time. So I hoard in the sense of, I'm looking at my pile of lace books that I almost certainly will never read. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28 books I've got on lace making. I've probably never opened any of those. Now, people go, oh, books don't count. Well, I've got a friend where I could prove to you books really should count. I have a friend, and she's a lovely lady, but she has this... She is kind of a minimum wage worker. Not quite, but it's pretty close. She is a low-paid worker, and she has a real shoe problem. She's a bit of a Imelda Marcos. And so, for example, I have no shame in this. I'm wearing a pair of Crocs as my slippers. Yeah, I know, they're Crocs. Fine, laugh at me all you like. I wear a pair of Crocs as my slippers because I have dogs and I do not want the soggy sock factor, right? So I've got a pair of Crocs I walk around in the house. I wear those every day. I do not think twice about wearing those every day. My friend will not wear the pair of shoes she wore yesterday today, on the grounds that apparently it gives you terrible feet infections. 52, never had a foot infection, right? Even when I've ripped off my toenail and it's bled a lot, I have never had a foot infection. Never. Not once. So, I'm not convinced by this. But, so she has, and she won't alternate them either. So it's not like she's got like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday kind of pair of shoes and then a Tuesday, Thursday pair of shoes. No. She's pretty much got like 40 pairs of shoes. And as we all know, shoes are not cheap. They are not a thing to be having an excess of, frankly. It's like Ming vases. You just don't need an excess of them. On top of that, she has, let's call it a more minimalist household. You and I would never feel comfortable, right? We feel like we're sitting in a show home, right? And I love her dearly. I really, really do. But she has very little in her house except for books. And she has a dream. And at one point she got rid of a load of her stuff because she had a dream. And it turned out that the dream was not entirely practical, although she still wants to do it, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, because, well, you can't legally do it, but I'm sure she can do something. Anyway, her rule of thumb is, if you have not used it in 6 months, chuck it. I've got a house of stuff. I have, to qualify this, my old house is used as storage. I have not been to my old house in about 4 years. I'm still not chucking anything in there. I mean, there is some stuff to chuck in there. I mean, truly and reasonably, there is some stuff to chuck in there. But there's stuff not to chuck in there. There is distinctly stuff not to chuck in there. And so, I'm sorry, but, you know, just because I haven't used it in forever doesn't mean I should chuck it. So, I don't play my musical instruments. She doesn't play hers. She hasn't chucked that. I don't necessarily use my sewing machine for a few months. I'm certainly not chucking that. That was friggin' expensive. I haven't used my car. Admittedly, it's now dead, but I haven't used my car for months. I'm not chucking that either. Oh, well, I might actually, but, you know, it is that just because you haven't used it for 6 months, what, you chuck out your Christmas decorations every year and you buy new ones? Oh, screw that. Mind you, I don't tend to put up Christmas decorations because I've got dogs, but it is that I get the principle, and I don't disagree with her to a large extent. So, for example, let's say you had a go at lace making. You had a go, didn't really get on with it. Well, don't hang on to the stuff. If you weren't ever going to do it again, that is something you can get rid of, and I do agree with that. But at the same time, I did this age 11, and then I'm not the most experienced lace maker, I need to make that clear. A few months ago, my brain went, Liz, yes brain, I want to do lace making. So here I am, right? But of course I'd already chucked all the stuff because, well, actually I think my mother chucked my stuff because I was a kid. But I haven't done any knitting since 2020. Well, doesn't mean I get rid of all my knitting stuff. It really doesn't, because I will knit something. I'm just not desperately in the mood to knit something right now. I haven't crocheted something for a while. Doesn't mean I won't soon. I haven't touched my very expensive loom for nearly a year. Mainly because I got a bit knocked off from my last project because I stuffed it up. But again, it's not that I don't want to. It's just that I've only got X days in the week that I can do things, and I want to be currently filling them with lace making. So I am. If I was not lace making, I might be doing something else. For a few months, I did a bit of band weaving. So I did tablet and inkle weaving, and I really enjoyed that. And it's not that I don't enjoy it, it's not that I hate it, it's not that I'm not going to do it again, but the urge to lace make in the hours available is greater. Because let's face it, I can't really do them all at the same time. So it is very much, for me it is very much it's not that I've stopped doing it, it's just that I've got a project in mind, and to do that project I do kind of need to get on with it, because otherwise it'll be 20 years of not doing it and it's sitting in the corner, much like the project that's currently sitting mostly buried in under my shit pile. It's behind my shit pile, it's just that I can't see it from my shit pile, which is I decided I would try and make a doormat using the Peruvian rug making techniques, i.e. you put a load of warp threads on a loom and then you hand knot each and every tuft. Yeah, it takes like an hour and a half to do a row, and there's going to be a gazillion rows, so that's a thing. And when I did 2 or 3 inches of it, don't get me wrong, I did quite a lot of work on it, but then I got grabbed by a bug to do something else, because I mean, much like this, in theory, this is simple, and you can do this while watching telly. The weaving thing, the Peruvian rug style knotting thing, again, is something that is horrendously repetitive, and because it's one yarn, it's not even multicoloured yarn, well, it's just a variegated, it's called space dyed, but it's a multicoloured yarn. It is a carpet yarn, to be fair, so whatever that means in the world. So it's a coarse, nasty, cheap wool. It's scratchy as hell. But you have to you basically get an end and you kind of go innie outie, snip. Take the end, innie outie, snip. Take the end. It's a little overly repetitive. Now, I know that you could argue knitting, crochet, and in fact many of our hobbies are mind-numbingly repetitive, because, well, they are. But often there's an element of pattern, and you see the pattern forming, or colour changes, or with this, no. The first stitch is the same as the next stitch, as the last stitch, as 2,000 stitches later. It is absolutely and 100% mind-numbingly repetitive, which is why my brain cell, I think, kind of did go off that one slightly. Not the actual technique and the principle, but it's regressing the fact that it didn't do some form of pattern. Yeah. 4 years. That sounds about right. Sounds like some of mine. Yeah. Yeah, let me just do a bit of this, because, you know, we are on the home straight here, and with any luck, we really, please tell me I didn't need that one. I didn't need that one. This is well legit. You bet. I need my pusher. Where'd my pusher go? Right. So yes, 4 years. Yeah, I can believe that. My mat. My kind of hand done mat. The worst thing is in theory, I could have achieved the same on my weaving loom far quicker. It would turn out the same, but not be the same. So how do I explain that? What you do when you do it is you hold the end and you kind of go. So you put the end under, say, the left-hand one. It goes over, and you pass the little tiny chunk of thread. Well, you usually, let's try and work this out. You take the end from the source and you go under, say, the right one, over, back round, over the right one and under, and then over the top of the left one and snip the source. This gives you two pokies, not holding them together in the middle. You can achieve very, very similar things by standardly weaving on your weaving loom and inserting a wooden dowel to lift up some of the threads and then cutting them later. Because that's how towel's made, by the way. It's how you make a fluffy towel. Obviously the rod's quite thin, but what you do is you weave a bit, insert a rod, weave a bit, insert a rod, weave a bit. Well, basically it's kind of normal row of weaving, insert a rod, normal 2 or 3 rows of normal weaving, insert a rod, 2 or 3 rows of normal weaving, insert a rod, and 2 or 3 rows. And then when you kind of, you have a handful of rods, well, as long as a bit like the pins here, once you've gone so far down, you're kind of safe to remove them. The same's true with the dowels. You remove the dowels, and then right at the end you go snippy, 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 and now you have a fluffy towel. So now you know how towels are made. But it is that principle of a lot of these things could be done in such a way that you could use the fluffy towel concept to make a rug, as long as you used kind of carpet yarn. It's not like it's illegal to do it with anything else. It doesn't have to be used with, finest Egyptian cotton. It can be, the nasty scratchy carpet yarn. So, hence the slight regret, I think, because that would have been so much easier. And I own the dowels to make said mat as well, because I got some to make towels. So, which I never did. I haven't got around to that project yet. That one's still in the plan to make a fluffy towel. Although, as long as you get the right yarn, I did make, and I use, it needs a wash, so I'm not prepared to go and get it, because it looks more like I've wiped my backside with it at the moment, because I think I wiped some dog paws with it. But if you use cotton chenille, now weaving with cotton chenille is the worst thing to do, because while you weave it, it looks glorious. On the loom, looks totally glorious. You take it off and wash it, and this thing shrivels to kind of like the size of a postage stamp, and you have to re-stretch it to put it back to where it should be. But because it's chenille, it's fluffy, and it's really quite nice. So hence I do have one that I use because I really like it. So I've got a couple actually, I think. And I've got some more chenille to make more with because, well, I really like it. But hence the piles for future projects. I've got enough weaving yarn, I think, to see me to retirement, possibly and beyond. I've certainly got enough knitting crochet yarn because there's a room in my old house full of it. That's not the right heart. Why is this not adding up? It's because you are not the thing. I've stafforded it up somewhere. Take you out. It's because I didn't pin you. There you go. So yeah, weaving with chenille yarn, because it's slightly fluffy, is super cool. Now, in theory, nothing stops you lace making with it either. So you could make some interesting things with knitting stroke weaving yarn. It would just be really big. And to be honest, like I said to you in your video, because when I found you, to make sure I found you, your macrame is arguably not dissimilar to lace making. It's just that you hold the ropes, we dangle ours around on bobbins. So we pass them around, generally. Now, so for example, one thing you will notice is, let me show you when we do this one, right? So, if I go back to the beginning of this row, because, well, that's what we need to do, and you look at these two bobbins, there is ugly orange bobbin and blue and kind of white spangly bobbin, right? So, as we move across, blue and orangey spangled bobbins are now working for the next pair. They work their way across. The only difference between how maybe you do it and I do it is you get to pick your rope up and just move it. We work across. Now, we don't generally have what I would in weaving terms call floats. We don't have generally long skipping threads. They are twisted amongst themselves. But realistically, that is the only difference between macrame and lace making, is that you can skip 12 threads. I would not. Other than that, twisty, swappy, it's kind of the same. There is a lot. And of course, we call all of our stuff differently to you because, well, we can. Yes. And like you've said, my finishing up is definitely my nemesis. I suck at that. But, like you say, it's the... You do things and you put... You do things, and it's... There are similarities and differences between so many crafts. I mean, if I think of my weaving terms, cloth stitch is plain weave. It's all it's achieving is plain weave. It's there are similarities and differences, and which is why the untrained eye, when looking at quite a lot of things, can't always tell the craft that was used to create it, is because, well, it's almost not fair to expect them to, because, you know, if you look at this and you see the cloth section, and maybe there's quite a lot of the cloth section in the piece that you're looking at, well, it looks hand woven. The difference comes in the holes, but of course there's a thing called leno or lino, or I've only ever seen it written down, so pronunciation could be wrong, but that's where you twist warp threads to make holes while weaving. Well, that's going to look like lace now, isn't it? Now, admittedly, you can't really twist them to go that far away without them looking a little bit manky. But, again, it's still going to make it look like lace. So if you used tiny threads to do it with, well, hang on. I thought I messed up, but I haven't. That's alright. Trivet knots. Oh, okay, I shall do that. I shall definitely do that. Because I am one of these people. I do blame my mother for this, even though my mother was possibly the most hideous person on the planet. I do in part blame. I did do a little bit of macrame as a kid, only a little bit. But my mother was constantly trying different crafts. Now, she never really stuck at any of them. Whereas I definitely put myself more in the category of today I'm currently doing, and it's not that I've given up upon the others, I am just currently in a project of insert this, and maybe in I would say almost like I have fats. So I go so for 2 or 3 years, I made tea towels. Pretty much. I think I worked out I made a couple of 100 tea towels, right? And I think I burnt out slightly on the whole tea towel front. Maybe that was part of it, but my last project being a bit of a miscalculation didn't really help. And so the truth of the matter was, it's not that I've given up on weaving, because I really haven't. I've still got a big plan full of ideas. But I currently want to be making some lace, so I am. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. We've only got, what? 1, 2, 3, 4? Yeah, 4 more rows. Of course, they're getting longer, but the amount of triangle remaining truly is diminishing rapidly. It's almost the getting ready. IGTK. No, is the short answer. I am not affiliated with anything or anyone. No guilds, no, not even the local guild. I did try the local spinning stroke, they claim to do weaving, but mainly spinning guild. The woman who ran that was the most conceited, rude woman I have met for many years, and I've met some choice individuals. And it was my first time going. I was off work with stress at the time, and so I chose to go to the meeting, because of course it was during work time, because nearly all of these guilds seem to work only during working hours. And my first day, and I turned up at the time they said, and well, she didn't, and it wasn't open for nearly another hour yet, which was slightly annoying, because it was a bit boring. But I sat up in the corner and kind of minded my own business a little bit while people arrived, and they all obviously knew each other, and I kind of said hello to them as they wandered past, and they kind of nodded appreciatively as they did. And then there was this other lady who turned up. Now, I'm 52. I was probably nearer 40-something at the time. So I would have classed myself middle-aged at this point. This woman must have been 60 to 70 plus. She may even have been 80. She had been spinning since she was a little girl. And she was very good at it, frankly. I mean, she'd made some beautiful yarns. She'd bought one. She bought one she was working on and matching. So she was doing that. And this woman walked up to her. Now, much like I'm sure your macrame, if you wish to call it that, your rope work, how you physically hold it, whether you pick it up this way, pick it up that way, whether you do that and then maybe take one out, or how you do that, as long as you end up in the right, as long as things end up right, it doesn't really matter how you do them. And to be honest, like I've said before, lace making to a large extent is the same. We have cross and twist, and realistically you should do them that way round. So left over right is cross and twist is right over left. But if you did them the other way round, and as long as you were consistent, wouldn't really matter, right? It is the consistency that is key for nearly all of these things. And it's the same with knitting. You've got pick and throw knitting and combined knitting. I tend to now do combined knitting, which is not a mixture of both pick and throw knitting. Combined knitting is where you do your pearls the wrong way around and sort them out when you come back the other way, because it's a lot easier and less painful on the thumbs. but primarily is a form of pick knitting, or continental, as some people call it. But the reality of all of these things is, as long as the stitch ends up right, it doesn't matter how you made it. There's Portuguese knitting, I've tried that. That works quite well. But wasn't really me, because I don't really wear things to put the pin on, or have something other, and I don't really want it traipsing around the back of my neck. So, I decided that was not a me version, but I can. And so it is that kind of principle, is that as long as it ends up right, there are no thought police on how you do it. Now, of course, like everything, there are always a few elitists in any crafting thing. Oh, one must do exactly this. Well, I can tell you now, if you go onto YouTube and you look up how to use GIMP threads in lace making. Now, a GIMP thread is where you palm a fat thread through to give it decoration. I had thought of doing it for my net curtain, to give it a bit of an outline in places. I can't be bothered. But you can do it in colour to give it maybe a little hint of colour, and it can work really well. If you've got, instead of these cloth stitch joined zigzags that I've got going on, you could skip that and use a GIMP thread to outline, say, the rose ground squares, and that will also look pretty effective. So it is a more delicate way, shall we call it, of doing that. And some lace making things use a lot of GIMP threads, and some it's entirely optional, right? So you go onto YouTube, you look up how to use GIMP threads. Now, bear in mind, usually you have 4 bobbins. So you come to use your GIMP thread. They will tell you to twist it first. The number of twists will vary. They will also tell you sometimes to go with the twist and sometimes to go against it. And they will all swear they are both traditional. So what do I mean with going with the twist and going against? The twist you put right over left. So the left-hand thread is below, the left-hand thread is above, the right-hand thread becomes below. Some of them will say you go under the left and over the right, therefore it fits in the twist that's already there. Others will say you go under the lower thread and over the other thread, therefore but going against the thread, so it would be trapped rather than joining the current kind of twist. Both of them swear they're right. Well, that's because you can do either. It is the consistency. As you say, some of the knitting but this is why I'm really interested by the crafts, is because while primarily in 2024 most of us craft because we can, we are not necessarily doing it for necessity. It's not like I have bare windows and it's a crime and I've got to make me net curtains. It is not that I have nothing to wear and I need to knit me a jumper. Although I've got plenty of yarn and do need to knit me a jumper because I want to. But I don't need to knit it. I could go and buy one. But why are you all the way up there? It's right. It slid forward. That was what was putting me off. It looked like it had kind of escaped. So we are doing our crafts because we can make a decorative item or even a functional item, depending. But we are choosing because we can. It is not our income. Well, it might be. I mean, I know some people who do it as income, and I'm not going to pretend that as a streamer I ever expect to make a penny. So let's put that really out there. I am not expecting to make money. I do not expect a royalty check from Twitch going, oh great, I can give up my job. If I ever reach that, I'll be kind of impressed. So, there are people, and I have been surprised by the amount of money that some of these people get. No offence, people like Mr. Beast. Can't say I think he's a great individual, but by making a handful of YouTube videos, gets himself popular, gets more viewers. He then makes, frankly, ludicrous videos, but he makes millions. There are people that I do watch, there was one lady I used to watch on YouTube. I don't tend to watch her anymore after a pissy fit over something, because she did the whole and it's like, love, you make money by being in the public eye. You need to get over the fact that if you're in the public eye, the whole world doesn't bend to your will. I'm truly sorry, especially at her age, because she's kind of my age. You do need to grow up a little bit. So, I did not fall for her, and clearly, that makes me not one of her kind of people, and it was all childish, so I gave up on that. But she is a really good example. She used to do 1 or 2 videos a week. They would be half an hour long. She made enough money doing this. Bear in mind, most of her videos were somewhat repetitive, because, they're makeup videos. How different can they be? She would do this for, basically produce an hour's worth of video a week. She made enough money to have a house built. Her husband did not work, and they lived purely from her proceeds of this. She then got sent tons of PR material from companies going, "Oh, please do our stuff." So she got it all for free. So she wasn't even having to buy the stuff to work with, And she had a clearly sufficient income, because, I don't wear makeup. I've never really worn makeup. But a bit like watching hoarding and stuff on TV, there is a fascination, because I need not to be that person, but at the same time, I'm interested in how they got, to that point in their life. And so I used to watch makeup videos and stuff, but, we're going to do a daily wear test. Well, I got out of bed at 11. Honey, I've been at work for 3 or 4 hours by this point. What do you mean you got out of bed at 11? Oh, you then spent 90 minutes putting your face on and doing all the creams and lotions and potions, and it cost you about £1,000 worth of product to do that. You then, it's 6 o'clock and your day's over. I'm sorry, that's like half a day's work. If your makeup doesn't last the full day, that's one of the reasons I wouldn't wear it, is I need it to actually last from when I get up to when I stop doing sociable things. Even if, that means that I come home in the evening from work and have to take it all off and do it again. Not that I would, but, principle. That might be acceptable, but it's got to stay looking reasonable until I get home. If it can't even last the journey to work, then, well, frankly, I'm not bothering, right? That, and I touch my face too much, because I don't normally wear makeup, and so I'm not used to not touching my face, and so I can't wear makeup. I did try once. I wore it for my wedding. It was the worst thing I ever did. But, you watch these people, a daily wear test, and it's literally, 5 or 6 hours. That's not a day. There are very few people whose working day, even if you turn up to work, rush to the toilet, put your face on, even then, it's still going to be longer than that. Yeah. I find them amusing, which is why I used to watch them. I don't tend to watch them anymore. There's a few things I watch on YouTube because I'm a geek, which is, there's a couple of guys who make some programming videos, and the one guy I watch the most is, he talks about using concepts that perhaps you haven't thought about using, which I quite like, because, well, as he says, they're usually stuff that you possibly know about but haven't actually thought, I wonder if I can use that for this. And so he gives some examples of how to use this in a new way, or did you know that hidden in here is this and you can use it like this? and you know, maybe you didn't know you could do that with it, and there's been quite a bit of that recently, which is quite good. And so I enjoy those videos because I am at heart a programmer. I don't do it for my job. Well, I kind of do it for my job, but they don't pay me to do it for my job. It's not what I'm employed for. So yes, it is. Oh, I need one extra pair. How does that work? I fucked up again. Seriously, this pin here. Let me zoom in on this. Hang on. And point it up a bit and get my pokey. Where's my pokey stick? Right. When we were doing the cloth earlier, I missed a pin, look, which is why it didn't add up. Well, sorry, which is why, although it did add up, it shouldn't have added up. We will fudge it. We will fudge it because we're near the bottom. And screw it all. We will fudge it because this should be for the bottom row, and I should have noticed last row, but I didn't. So we will pretend. Da, 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 da. But we're nearly there, guys. Very, very nearly there. So. Zoom me out. Zoom me out a bit. There you go. Pin. See, it's stopping like that makes you make mistakes as well. Is that you stop and then you look back and you're going, what was I doing now? Because that's definitely a thing for us old people. Memory of a gnat. I am so bad about holding pins. I went to the hospital a little while ago for a checkup, and I am fine, by the way. But while I was there was a lady who was pregnant, and she picked something up, and she immediately dropped it, and I do this all the time. And I said to her, have you noticed that you go to pick something up, and it's like those little grabby hand things where you pull on a handle to kind of close the teeth? And you need to keep tension on it to keep the teeth closed. And it's like you pick it up and immediately let go. And you immediately drop the thing that you've just picked up, like some form of idiot. And she goes, I do it all the time. I said, so do I. And it's almost like there's someone behind me pulling a string to make me let go. Because I want this thing. I want it in my hand. I want to take it somewhere. And I literally pick it up and just kind of go, and wonder why I've let go, because it's just infuriating. So, but I seem to have similar problem with pins, is that because these are so thin, I almost can't feel them in my fingers. Lost a row. And I need to go and rescue 2 of these because I missed a bit. Right. which also means I somehow had the wrong number of bobbins as well. So let's not dwell on that one, because that now doesn't make sense, because, well, it just doesn't. Anyway, last row, and then we do something with the ends to try and stop them all coming undone. You're done. It's a bit long, really, but it's fine. Nearly there. Yay, last pin. Go in the hole. There you go. Hurrah! 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 Right. Now, first of all, we are going to grab my pin pot. Is that the right pin pot? I was messing with other pins earlier, so let me turn this round, and for the stupidest reason in living history, I'm going to push these pins down now. You are another pin. We're going to take all of the pins that are up out. Sleepy pin. Looks bad, but they stick to me. But never when I want them or need them to. Oh, that one won't. Anyway, that one pinged off into the distance. They stick into your skin, because they're really fine pins. They've got really fine points on them, and they even the heads of them are fine, so they can catch under you, almost catch under your skin. It's just really irritating. I hate these pins. They're nice in that they make nice lace work, but like the spangles, they're really awkward. Last time I used much chunkier pins. I may return to chunkier pins. This will be a decision as to whether I like the smaller holes or bigger holes in where the twists are and the pins sit. Ta-da! There we go. Ta-da! I've seen better. I've made better. But we now need to do something with these ends to stop them unravelling. So we will do the most childish and coarse method of finishing this, because, well, this is a test strip, not a real event. So and of course with the real event you actually end up back here and doing the bobbins in a more, I won't say hidden manner, but a less bad manner. So what I will do is, assuming they're long enough, is tie a knot. This is where they mate, of course. Yeah, you can do it. There you go. You can do it. So, we will do this primarily across the thing, just to stop it all unravelling, really. I just need to make these last bunch of bobbins long enough to tie knots with. I mean, there are other ways of doing it, but as this is never going to be a thing of beauty, because it's got too many mistakes in it, and of course we already know we're not going to be using it for anything, so it is purely for deciding whether we like it in the pattern enough or not. It is our swatch. It's hard. This is one of the worst things about lace making, is swatching a chunk. So bear in mind this is 1/4 of a square. So it would take 4 times. Yes, it is a half hitch. And what I do, let me grab one and zoom in. Hang on, let me zoom in. Put my cloth over it to make it all dark for you. And grab a bobbin. Okay, let me adjust camera a bit so you can see. It's not going to be as clear as I would like, but there is this, obviously it's twisted around the bobbin, and if you grab the loop and extend it, you can either shorten it then by winding it on and moving up, or by unmoving it, by unravelling it, and then of course it gets, well, it's gone off screen, but by unravelling it, the loop gets longer, and then when you pull it tight, let me zoom out, this is where you really need a cameraman, isn't it? But when you unravel it, the thing is longer, and that's really too long, but never mind. So all I do is kind of unravel it, and it gets longer by pulling on the loops. So hence they often fall off, because obviously a half hitch is not, it needs an element of tension to stay on the bobbin. Sometimes you can in fact just turn them and they will get longer, so just by holding tension and it will get longer. Again, this is why they come unravelled a bit, and you end up fanning around with them quite so much. I need you to get out of the way. I don't want you tied in it. Thank you. So yes, quite often with the half hitch, you can just put a bit of tension on it at a right angle, and it will let you. What's this one doing? This one's being annoying. Hang on. This bobbin's doing annoying things. And it's got its friend looped around it. That's why it looks funny. Hang on. Let me unloop its friend around the spangle. There we go. And you now need to go through there too. Thank you. So yes, you just, if I do it again, if I hold it at the top, it's not going anywhere, and I can twist it all I like, and it doesn't matter. If I hold it at right angles and twist it in the right direction, it gets longer. Sometimes it gets a little bit more twisted, and you need to give it a hand by picking at it with a pin, or completely undoing it, because it's just had a complete, in the words of Bart Simpson, it's had a cow, man. It's just really done something stupid to itself, and it's just not playing ball. And quite often it's not always obvious why it's not playing ball. It's just not playing ball, and you can't, so you have to kind of cheat. But for the most part, and for this, I'm just doing a reef knot. We're not after elegance here. It's the edge of a test piece. We generally do one. Now, there is an alternative knot that kind of makes it much more like a hole hitch kind of thing. So, for example, that's not a really good bobbin shut on. Let's use this one because A, it's darker, and B. So let me undo my half hitch, right? Zoom in a bit and put my cloth, undo it a lot, and then put my cloth down. Right, so with this, normally you twist it once and you place it over your bobbin and you've got your half hitch, right? There is an alternative one which gives you a much more secure knot, but you can't do with short threads. So what you do is, I need to undo it a bit more because I need a bit more in my hand. You wrap it, it's coming in a clockwise direction off the bobbin. You put your thumb down, wind round your bobbin like that, so you make a zigzag, and then you put the loop that was on your thumb over the top. Now this is a far more convoluted knot to achieve, but it gives it kind of an extra twisty bit that stops it coming undone randomly, which we all know that the coming undone randomly is really annoying. I tend to put 2 twists in my half hitch so that it makes it quite clear to me where the twists are, and it tends to make it a little more secure from, if the bobbin falls off the pillow at the right angle, it will just unravel itself. It does tend to help them stay, well, on the bobbin, it seems. It makes it a little bit harder for it to come undone. But to be honest, kind of choice is yours. There are no thought police. No one will kill you if you use a different knot. Obviously, if you were sharing bobbins for some reason with someone, they might get a bit mad if you used a really weird knot and they don't know how to do it, or they don't know how to unravel it, or whatever. But in essence, as long as you're happy with it, it's fine. The ability to shorten and lengthen is generically a requirement, so it does have to be some form of movable kind of up and down. Let me deal with this. Report whatever the hell that name says, because there's no way I'm Spam. Report the spam bot. Come out of there. Bye spam bot. Right. I almost feel like I've made the big time because I'm getting spam bots. Not many of them, mind, but I mean, one stream I did get 5. That was quite a lot for me, anyway. It's interesting that they show up on mine. Yes. And to be honest, like a lot of these things, is again, how you achieve it isn't the important factor, is do you achieve it? It is not the journey, it is the destination for a lot of these things in crafting. Is as long as you've got the required result, how you got there is up to you and what makes sense to you. It's like how I broke up moving down my work. Other people would do it differently. But they're all valid. As long as you get to the end and you have the piece you wanted, and the bob, you know, because obviously there is an element of bobbin must be here for you to be able to use it. But the truth is you could have done this bit, that bit, some of this bit, all of that bit. You could have done maybe in rows. You could have, you know, there are choices, and there are some elitist craft people who will, you know, almost have a go at people for not doing it in the order that they feel is the correct order. But who says they're right? I mean, for example, when you're doing a percentage, you take, let's say you're doing 50% of 100, because they're really easy numbers, right? You divide 50 by 100 and times it by 100 to get the actual percent. So if it was 5 out of 25, you divide 5 by 25 times it by 100. But you can times by 100 first. Well, you can. Doesn't make the answer different. And quite a lot of people do it that way. By the way, that pin's done. I can get rid of that one for a minute. Right, so make you a bit longer. One of the things you can do that you can't really see off screen is that if you hold the bobbin at the right angle, sometimes you can just, because, so if you hold them at 90 degrees to where they normally are, you can actually use the bobbin's tension on the pin, especially at this stage, to unwind the bobbins, rather than using your finger and holding the string. So it, again, works out the same. As long as it gets longer and you don't break any, it doesn't matter. Now, I have a horrible habit. Bear in mind, these are not the ideal knots to be doing at the end. Technically, you do some knots potentially at the end of lace making like this, but not like this. But you do some knot doing, right? However, this is going to be fun because, of course, I made them all a big, massive pile. So, I want that one. And so it is common to tie knots at the end, but generally there are no knots in lace making. There are only twistings one way or another. Occasionally people put knots in to help. So for example, apparently people can often put, it is depending on the type of lace that you're making, and this knot has not travelled up the threads as I thought it might. There you go, that's better. In Bedfordshire lace, this is done on a 45 degree angle. Bedfordshire lace is usually done on a 56 degree angle, I think it is. Again, same shit, slightly different. It is common to use a knot to secure points of your gimp threads that we talked about earlier. But it is literally one overhand knot. It is not a knot, it is just a casual kind of stay put, you know, I want you here kind of thing. And again, this is where spangles suck terribly for poking them through a hole that you can't really see. So it does make life. Now I have a problem with reef knots. I have a fundamental, like the tallies and working out of which bobbins I should have, scenario. And we need to untangle here. I need you, wherever you are. It's you and you. There we go. All of the books say to do, all of the lace making things say when you do a reef knot, I was always taught reef knot is right over left, left over right. You can do left over right and then right over left. You know, that level of thought, please, doesn't matter. But the lace making books, all it seem to do is the same knot twice. And then they seem to cut them off at 0 millimeters above the knot, and the knot doesn't fall apart. Well, if I do that, the knot, if I sew, this is right over left. If I did right over left again, the left one is just a straight line, in essence. So, surely it's got to be left over right, which is why I do the funky thing with that. So that this knot, I can trim pretty little tassels, and of course then they all stick out like rabbit ears, which is why I'm not very good at finishing lace sometimes, because I end up with rabbit ears. But if you don't do that, surely that is not a secure knot. Now there is a way to make this look neater. So for example, I am doing, right over left, left over, right over, left over right and right over left actually, but whichever way round it works out as. It's I bend my right one round the strings and then I bend the left one round the strings as well. That's actually what I'm doing. I don't know whether it's over or under, to be honest. It didn't snug up quite as well as I wanted, but never mind. It doesn't really matter. It's only a test. Let's take the cloths off because I need some of these. Now I need you and you. Missed. It's you. Yes, they are. And you see, this is why I struggle with a lot of these things. And I think this is, again, part of the kind of autistic level brain cell, is everyone goes, oh, this square knot, or reef knot, as they like to call them, is perfectly stable and will never come undone. Really? There is a weaver's knot, and I can show you. In fact, I did actually cover it on a video. And I'll show you later if you're still around. Because we will get. I've got quite a few knots to go, but at the end I can show you my problem. There is a weaver's knot where you put you cross a couple of threads, you wind it around your thumb a bit, you tuck a bit in, you give it a yank. And this is never supposed to come undone. Mine do. The answer is probably, but I would have to look up the exact definition before making true comment, because like you've said, they've probably got a number of different names, and because I do not commonly call it that, my brain is going, I do not understand what that means, and then it will probably go, oh, I've done that 20,000 times. Fisherman's knot, fisherman. See, to me, that's a reef knot. Which is why, like you've said, because they've all got, 2,000 different names, that it really doesn't help, because they've got so many different names. But then you also get the ones, and I'm sure you've seen this one, where people do the knots differently, right? So you do a sailor's knot, or you do a reef knot, or whatever, and then Somebody else does a reef knot, but they do it differently. But they still call it a reef knot. And you're like, we do not need this. We do not need 1,000 different names for things, but then people calling a different load of different things the same name. Can we stop? Can we just not? Let me sort these out because... Right, you and possibly you. So you two are a thing. You two. Let me find your friend. Where's my pokey stick? Pokey stick, pokey stick. Pokey stick. Pokey stick. Pokey stick. Right. So, let's have a look. And what are you two? You two are together, you two are together, so I need to tie a knot with you two. And I think, in part, so for example, that's a really good example. You've talked of a fisherman's knot and a sailor's knot. To a lot of people, that's probably interchangeable. And I think this is where a lot of the problems come from, is that not only do they have... I will show you the weaver's knot. But I have had it work, and I've also had it spectacularly fail. And yet, I will swear on my soul, I did the same thing twice, on both occasions. And, you know, it's a bit finicky and it's a bit crap, but if a knot doesn't feel one you can reliably repeat, even though the actions you are taking would appear to... I hope this one's come undone, as it makes a bid for the floor. If the actions you take do not, and you seem to reliably do the same action. So, for example, with the weaver's knot, you put one thread... You make kind of bunny ears behind your thing with 2 threads crossing between your thumb and first finger. You then wrap, go round, pull it down a bit, tuck this end in, pull. Now, I think it's the pull that makes it go wrong. I think that, a bit like tatting, where you make a U and then you flip, because let's say I put a knot round this one, but if I pull it, I can make it that the other one's moved, not, and this one's straight, kind of thing. I don't need them all to be perfect, but I do need them to be, reasonable. So I need to find this bobbin and extract it from the pile of other bobbins. Oh look, something fell off. Oh! Ew! Ew! That's horrid! Ew, that's disgusting. So, in almost true TV style, as we cut to ads, I was going, ew, that's gross. It's not utterly gross. It's not like I found body parts or a pile of puke or anything of the sort. No. This bobbin, which you probably can't see because it's probably blurry now, but someone obviously painted these lower beads, and as you can see, if I sort of twist it round, there's bits missing, and basically a great clump of paint fell off. It was kind of like, and I didn't know where it had come from, so there was this big kind of tar black lump with a bit of a hole in it, and it was kind of like, what the fuck is that? And so hence the ew, because initially I thought it was something gross, dead beetle remains or something, and no, just a lump of paint. Now, these are a little more knotted than my heart desires, frankly, and my patience is capable of, I think, is also part of the problem. Under, over, under. Now, look. I need pokey stick. I need this thread here, which is under these. It's only one of you two. Which one of you two is it? It's not you, it is you. So let's excavate you. And somehow this one has mated its way in. Which we have to take you over there and unpack you all the way through. Oh, I know surgeon knot. Surgeon's knot, I do know. Surgeon's knot is basically you do 2 wraps on the knot. I use those for weaving. So surgeon's knots are good, but the problem with lace, as I'm sure you can imagine, is while you have stupidly tiny fine threads of doom, the actual problem is that the knots seem to end up feeling like Mount Vesuvius, and they seem huge and they get in the way, and what you don't want is, a huge lump, because as you will see when I take these off, I am doing a slight reef knot and I'm going to leave longish tails because it's a test piece. It does not need to be, some form of prize item. So this is more just for holding the I'm tying the knots so that it doesn't try and unravel once I remove all the pins, right? This is the only reason we are doing knots. We are not doing it because, this is going to be in use and it needs longevity, right? However, this is not dissimilar to how many people finish their lace. Anyway, lots of people do the knot that I'm doing, but to me, this knot is not sufficient. Now, as you say, a surgeon's knot, instead of me going round the other thread once, they go round twice. And while I don't know quite how that works with well, I do, but it looks really weird when they do it with when they do it on something, because they've got an end and then they twist and pull, and it makes it look odd because, of course, instead of moving both slightly, they only move one and they use pliers or whatever to hold their ends, and so it just looks different because you're not having 2 active ends. You've only really got the one active end, and you pull it through and then trim the other one, a bit like I was saying with the Peruvian carpet thing, and it's just that kind of, it makes it fart a bit in my head. So watching surgeons do surgeons knots, I know it ends up the same, but my brain says, because I will never be holding one and twist, you know, one little edge like this and twisting the other one around it and then pulling it. Anyway, we're getting there. I know we've got quite a few to go, but bear in mind we do 4 at a time, so we are getting towards the end of my knots and the big reveal and undoing the pins and everything. So you are actually, no, you are just confused on top here. Right, you are actually one I want. You are the one I want. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Right. You are not one I want. You possibly are one that I want. My pokey stick's gone under my keyboard. Yes, the surgeon's not only, but because it's got the extra twist, it really does kind of lock in that I'm not moving kind of aspect. See, this is the problem with threads, is that even though I put these down in order, oh look, there's that pin that pinged off earlier, which I mean I can't pick up because it's too thin and it's too close to the paper, and even not, I don't know where it's gone now. Seriously, that is the problem. The pin, because the head isn't very big, you can't get anything underneath it to pick it up. I think I want you two. I think it's you two I want. So I want you up and you up. And you two uncrossed. You out the way. You out the way. Yep, these are the two I want. The surgeon's knot is a good answer, but not when you're tying 4 threads, and this is part of the problem, because like this, you don't normally, you would not normally tie necessarily bobbin to bobbin, because it's only securing it to itself. You need to secure it with a friend. So although I'm doing this rather kind of lazily and scruffily, which, you know, I truly am, this is not dissimilar, because you need to attach 2 different things. You can't just have a parallel pair of threads and tie a knot in it and expect it not to kind of do anything with it. So while a surgeon's knot would help, it just, because there are 4 threads and obviously you don't want to see knots in the final work, it does, in normal lace making, you don't really want to see the knots at the end. That's difficult. Now, one thing I do tend to do is this bottle of gloriousness. This is a bottle of Hallelujah Save the Day washable PVA glue. Because most lace making stuff does not get washed, you can tie, frankly, a crappy knot, a really small thin knot, and get with a pin a small dab of glue, put it where the threads cross, wait for it to dry, and then trim them really, really short. This helps with things like bookmarks, because you can cut close to the work without swearing, but at the same time you have, why, how are you one? Where is your friend? I need to find the friend for this one. Hang on. No. Somehow you seem to be on your own. This must be your friend, maybe? Is this your friend? Where's your friend end up all over there? Don't get wrapped around that. And then of course all the spangles. Spangles make untangling really hard. I mean, part of me says, make all the strings really, really long, cut off all the bobbins because they're getting on your nerves, and then just tie the knots. This is a potential thing. But we've done really well so far, and so
it's only now that I am getting, because I think part of it is you also get a little bit, but you're near the end, surely we can, you know, and it's just slowing you down getting to where you want to be. So I think you two are a pair, and then I need the next pair, which is you and your friend, that one. There we go. So we'll tie a knot in you two. We've only got about 5 or 6 to go, so, you know, I know you can't really see a lot. Even if I zoom out, you can't really see too much, because most of the time it's slightly off camera, but I'm only tying a knot, so, you know, hey. And it's a crappy knot at that, so, you know, this is not award-winning knots here. So that's an interesting thought, actually. When you've done your beautiful macrame and you've made like this fantastic thing, whatever you're making, whether it's an ornament, you know, an ornamental wall hanging, whether it's, you know, a mat, or, well, let's go with a mat. So you've been doing lots of crossings and you've made a beautiful kind of intricate patterned mat. How do you finish the edge without having, well, knots as kind of like a bumpy edge with hair, you know, with rabbit ears? How does that work? Because one of the things that I found with lace making, at least, is way too many videos show you how to do a individual stitch, which is fine, because, you know, people need to know that. But what they don't do, they'll show you how to start in a point or how to start flat, but they don't show you how to finish. There's like one. Now there is some videos, I've marked them on my paper on eBay, but they're in America. Done by a British woman, but in America. But because we're British, it's going to cost like 30 quid per video to send it. Because they're physical videos, they're DVDs. So you've then got the problem that there's a whole bunch of them and you kind of go, oh, I wouldn't mind that, oh, I wouldn't mind that, oh, I wouldn't mind that. So there's like 100 quid's worth of videos and 100 quid's worth of frigging posting. And then, you know, you're going to have to pay frigging import tax on that and all. And of course, you know, that's not cheap in this country. And so there is a bit of you that's kind of going, I think it works out as about 240 quid's worth of videos that I would like, again, need is not the word for it, on eBay, but you just can't bring yourself to have them, even though one of them is like 4 DVDs on starts and finishes, and I bet you 99% of it starts. And the starts are actually way more logical to me than the finishes. So the starts I'm less worried about. It's the finishes that aren't working out so well for me. And of course, a really crappy finish can really spoil something. So I don't know. But I've earmarked, I think it's 5 or 6 videos on eBay that I would really like, put them in my basket kind of thing. But the postage and the videos, it works out as like 236 quid or something. Hang on, I'll check in a minute. Because it's on my phone, so hang on. eBay. It is. Hang on. 7 videos. Roughly $54 a video, and even with combined postage, the postage will be, well, so the items amount to, I misread the number, please sit down. So the 7 videos amount to £289.17. The postage, £64.83. I could probably go on EasyJet and get a flight for that. So the grand total is £354. Needless to say, one has not clicked buy. I want to, but that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And much as I say I really, really want, is want enough, you know? Is the wanting factor worthy of quite a lot of money? Do we need to work out what's going on? Rory, you're not helping, my son. No. Doggy not helping. Actually, you... Rory, I said no. Piss off, dog. No. One moment, we have to appease the dog. He's going to bash the cushion. What? Yes, I know you love me. Yes, I know. I love you too. Yes. What? No, don't leap on me. I don't wish to be left. What's the matter? Stop licking me. I'm not a popsicle. You might see a dog head. Yes, there's a bit of dog head. Ooh, you use 3 strands natural fibre rope, and as your brain is different, that's fine. You approach the finishing differently, and you get a near perfect invisible finish. I believe in the near invisible finish because I have seen many pieces of lace where, frankly, this is done, but no one seems to document how. And at this point, I have struggled with this. Now, part of the reason these squares are quite good is, as per the core square that I've already made, that I show at the beginning of the stream. Rory, can you now sod off, please? I've hugged you, I've loved you, I still love you. I've loved you for 4 years. Yes, I have. And it's not changing, but I am... Get her off, please! I believe that there should be a way of doing it so that... I mean, obviously these threads are small, which doesn't help, right? But the principle should be enough that... See, half these bobbins come undone as well. It should be possible. Rory, get out from behind me. Stop jogging my elbow. It should be possible to achieve a finish where the threads are secure, that they will not escape into bids of freedom at some point. Now, possibly because they're smaller, there is a greater chance of movement, perhaps, which does mean that then, obviously, the threads would need to be tighter to achieve the same. That maybe is easier to do in a more, quote, rope environment. But it should be possible. It really should. Now, I do think that, you know, this is something I perhaps can learn from you, and I would be very interested to do so. Now, with weaving, partly what we sometimes do with weaving is when adding a new thread, for example, you don't actually make a knot at all. What you do is you strip out some of the threads from the old one and some of the threads from the new one, so that you have a crossover section, and they then hold themselves in, and this works very well. Last pair, freaking hallelujah! But in trying to do that with these threads, my eyesight is not going to be sufficient for that, because as we worked out the other day, this thread is 3 threads twisted together. So this is like yours, but mine measure like, you know, 0.01 millimeters. And so the eyesight to maybe pluck out a bit is, and have them progress from one to the other is, it's just not possible. You know, the world could not achieve this. Oh, I didn't take my early pin out. Oh well. Anyway, we have got to the end. Where are my scissors?
we are now at the point. We have tied knots. We are confident. We are going to remove that cloth too. We're going to gather our many threads into a thing. And the weight of these, funnily enough, when like this, is actually quite a lot. And I'm going to grab them all in this hand and then just roughly chop. Chop! One more to go. Chop! So let me put a cloth down so that I can put all my bobbins to be sorted out later. And now I really need 2 hands and I've only got 1. She says dropping some bobbins as a result. Right, put those in there. Pick up the one I've dropped. Right, let's wrap those up because we're done with those. Dollop. Oh look, a pin. It is time, my friends. We are going to... Where's my pin poker? There it is, behind my coat, where it usually lives. So, we are going to extract the pushed down pins. Which now you will be questioning why I press down the pins towards the end. This is because everything catches on pins that aren't pushed down, so therefore you push them down. A, so you can see what you're doing. B, so that it looks tidy and you can see things, but also so that they still do their job. Now lift them up and pull them out. I'm going to leave the tip for a little bit of stability. I'm going to leave the 3 in the tip so that the work doesn't slide while I'm doing it. But pokey poke, pokey poke. Probably easier to use my finger. See, what always puzzles me is, and you probably can't see this too well, and in fact I hope you can't see this too well. Hang on. Zoom. Is this going to show? Yes, it does vaguely show. Here. This. There is a brown speck of, I don't know, almost like a breadcrumb, but it's flat. And I find them everywhere. Yes, now the splicing is what we tend to do in weaving, but do you want to do that to these tiny threads? Bear in mind, we worked out this is something like 29 wraps per inch, so compared to your lovely chunky acrylic, on chunky acrylic, a piece of cake, because, well, you know, to be honest, your individual strands are thicker than this entire thread. So, I do, you know, the things I learnt in weaving could apply, but I'm not, as I say, I don't think my eyesight's necessarily up to it all. I'm not sure I could achieve that, so you should have come out, but never mind, there's going to be a little pokey bit. You are used to rope. And you see, this is the thing. With weaving, even though some of the yarns that I use with weaving are reasonably fine, I have not woven... Now, people do weave with stuff similar to this. They really do. This kind of thread that we're using here, people do weave with that. I haven't got the patience. It's a bit like the bobbin phobia, frankly, to me, is weaving with threads like this when you're making sort of like, you know, a number bigger than about 20 threads per inch. Having to measure, so at 20 threads per inch, if you were to make, I don't know, a tea towel, I generically make my tea towels 32 inches wide. Well, at 20 inches, that's a lot of threads.
And then of course you've got to throw that many picks as well per inch, and usually, and so it does. It just kind of, my brain goes, oh no, I'm not threading that many headers, because I'd probably have to buy a load to go that fine, to be honest. But of course, there was a program and they were talking about lost weaving skills, hence I was watching it, and they discovered this stuff. Sit down. That this weaving that used to get done was 1600, my brain's now caught up with my mouth, 1600 ends per inch. Just think of that. Now, bear in mind, ends per inch, if you were to wrap it round your ruler, to get 1600 ends per inch, you need 3200 ends per inch, because you've got the under and ovary bits, so you've got to allow for the holes where the thread goes in and out. Just picture how fine that shit is. I mean, it's just... Now, of course, they used to hand spin this, because back in the day they didn't have machines. And hence they called it kind of the lost art, because, you know, we don't do that fine. We really don't. Because even if you look at items that are claiming they're like 600 ends per inch, no, they're not. You can count them. There's usually like 40, right? It's not quite as it says it is, and you know, trade descriptions should apply. But you find yourself sitting there going, truly 1600. Jesus, I mean, that's almost finer than you can see. I mean, obviously you can see it, but, you know, it's almost so thin that it would appear transparent until you had enough of them, because they were just so fine you could barely detect it, right? And so, you know, kudos to these crafters for managing to make yarn that small, but also for them working with it. I mean, it's like a challenge. Everyone can do a bit of a challenge. That's right, I dropped a pin. Never mind. Everyone can do a bit of a challenge. And there's a bit of a challenge and a bit of a challenge. And maybe, you know, you did a really good challenge, and, you know, I managed to, I don't know, do your macrame with sewing thread, right? And, you know, you're sitting there with a magnifying glass, doing your twists and your crossings and and all the rest of it. And, you know, you do one of your mats, and it's, you know, it's a bit like the people who carve, you know, pencil heads, you know, on the tip of a pencil kind of thing. You know, they do some beautiful work, but you can't really appreciate it because, well, it's not very practical. But it is a good challenge to do. You know, you can work with a steady enough hand to make a beautiful thing, rather than, you know, if I tried that, I'd break it every freaking time. So, Rory, if I have to explain to you one more time that you are not helping... Oh, look, more ads. Give it a rest. Well, go and bark at it then. Go out and bark at it if it needs barking at. Don't mumble at me I don't care. Unless they're coming to steal my dinner. 2 pin. 1 pin. It is free, my friends. Right, let's pick up my pattern. Hang on, there's 4 more pins. But these were chunky pins, so I need to put them separately because I don't want them mixing with the thin ones. Hang on, chunky pin. Chunky pin. Chunky pin. See, look, it's free now too. Right. Let's review. Now, technically, I need to flip it over because we work on the wrong side. In practical terms, from a distance, they look about the same. So, scrolling out a bit, let's have a look. So, here we have our triangle. Let's try and get a bit more in frame for you. Zoom me out a little bit more. So here we have a quarter of a square. I'm quite pleased with how that looks. I think if you imagine many of those, so obviously it will be square, and then, you know, 3 by 4, I think we worked it out it needs to be. No, it's probably more than that. 3 by 6, I think it is. This bit here, which looks more like a fuck-up, let's zoom in on that for a minute. Lift this up. You can now see the shapes a little better with the crosses in. And I think if you were doing a piece with that as the core stitch, not just a small corner of the end of the last one, it could work quite well. It is quite an effective stitch, and I think it would look quite nice, potentially, as a neck curtain-y effect. But I definitely think that because the ground stitches need, you know, you can't do little squares at the edges quite so well because it's a more tapered shape. I think I'm happy with how that's turned out. I'm happy with the density of things. She says, really squinting in. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how all of that's turned out. Some of my rose grounds towards the end here look a little bit deformed. They look pretty sorry for itself, especially those two. But I think part of that is the eagerness to finish and all the rest of it. There are multitudes of mistakes, as we are aware. The one thing that is quite surprising is that, given how... Let's me zoom out. Given how it's made of infinitely thin thread that has 0 sticky up power of its own right, lace which strikes me as quite stiff. Even though, I mean, that's... I mean, obviously it's not got a lot of weight, but if I, at the widest point, put it on my finger, it is not kind of draping flat over the edge of my finger. So it hasn't really got drape in the way that you might think it will. Which can be a good thing and a bad thing, because bear in mind, I am not making a... Yes, and the geometry part, I mean, if you... I can't go wide enough to show the pattern at the same time. But obviously, the pattern will be, you know, from a distance, these sections will stand out. The rest is background. And I think, hence this ground stitch, I think, is correct. Because, again, from a similar, you know, from the same distance, clearly, while you can see that there is a form of netting, your eyes are drawn to those centre stitches. Now, in the original square, remind you of the original square, which looks like this. The original square, similar principle, but there were distractions around the outside, distractions in the middle, and those honeycombs that we just put across in the middle, inside that highlighted section. And for me, it just, while it was my, hey, I could make a neck curtain from that kind of inspiration, it didn't strike me as a neck curtain, which is why I went a lot simpler.
because even if you buy, and I am not one of them, the people that buy, big flowery patterns. The flowery patterns are big and fairly simple. They're not elaborate. I mean, they're elaborate, but they're not fussy. Whereas this is quite simple, and you are drawn to what will be the square inside the square, away from maybe the joins. I am a geometric-y shape person, partly quite why I like Celtic knots, because they're geometric, but they're curved geometric. Now, because we're making a square, it's very difficult to make something then that is not square inside it, because, or of a square derivative. Because, for example, if I go back to my done square, so we can pretend that that one. The reason it's that one is this one comes with voice, right? Is you can't really continue down the sides those diamonds top to bottom. You possibly can to an extent, but you can't. Now, what you could do is make a strip and then join strips together. Then you could have, let's call them vertical stripes. No, yeah, vertical stripes. Sorry, brain checking on horizontal versus vertical. You could make vertical stripes because you're making strips, and you can do the strips either vertical or horizontally. You'd make them vertically, and therefore you could do strips. So you could do, for example, a strip with, say, more like the zigzag and the pattern in the middle, and then have a plain one, zigzag one, plain one, zigzag, and make that kind of, and that could look really attractive. And to be honest, it would not necessarily be less bobbins, because of course, if you think about it, this diagonal, let me go back to my triangle. Back to triangle. If you think of triangle, at this point, this is the maximum number of bobbins. But you would start with them, you would end with them. It is not more bobbins, it is the same number of bobbins. So, it's not really a big deal. You could do strips, and then you would do a strip of, say, ground, pretty ground, and then have another vertical strip of just, say, ground. That'd be really boring to make, and you'd probably make lots of mistakes as a result. Or with a much simpler stripe in it, so there is something for you to concentrate on when you make it, but that it is a very minor. So a bit like when you have suits and you've got the thick stripe, the shadow stripe, and then a thick stripe. You could do that kind of pattern. And again, when big bolster cushion comes, something of that kind of ilk becomes more of an answer, because you can now make the entire width in one go. You could irregularly put in strips with pattern, not pattern, right? So there is a lot to look forward to, but I am happy with this square. Bar the attempted choice at the bottom, which had potential, and I don't hate it. I honestly don't hate it, but I think I would prefer my neck curtain to have that as my background and stay with the simple, here is a background kind of neck curtain, and then here is the highlighted squarey pattern that will appear a number of times, drawing you away from the potentially not professionally joined edges, because, well, that could be a thing. So I am really pleased with that. I finally finished something. We have finished our triangle, but picture this. If we have got to do 3 across, say, well, if 3 across is 43, we know it's more than twice that down, so it's got to be 6 or 7 down, right? It's taken me, let's say, 2 weeks to do a quarter of one square. And there are going to be 21 squares. That's the best part of a year, so I'm going to be here for a while, folks. Now, you do build up speed, to be honest. You really do. The first time I did this, I think... So what is the geometric park actually called? It's not called anything. It's just the bit in the middle. It does not technically have a name. The stitch I have used is called rose ground. And it makes the... If I zoom in... It allows you to make... What you do is, because you, as you know, as you've watched me, you arrive at a point and you do a whole stitch to gather them together to make the two corners of the square. You do a half stitch, pin, half stitch to make the kind of circle hole inside the square, and then you do whole stitch and whole stitch at the corners to make the final square. And I really like the look of rose ground because it makes circles and squares. Now, admittedly, I'm looking at it and it looks like I kind of faux pas a little bit on this one. Might just be a tension issue. So, slightly irregular, but it is... No, it is a 4... It's not an 8-pointed star. In true terms, I can answer this. Let me bring up my program of doom. So, let's switch to... Shut up, dog. Let's switch to program. And let me demonstrate. So let me make it a bit smaller so that when you see it now, let me do something before I make it smaller. There's a bug in the program. If the thing's too small, it doesn't let me zoom in. So let me zoom in and make it a bit smaller so you can really see what's going on. Right? If I go to my loader motif thing and find a rose ground, hang on. Well, actually, the rose ground that they've got there is not quite what I wanted. Let me look through. This is the best definition of it I can find. So, this isn't quite how it works because it's done on a smaller scale. In fact, let me just draw one. This is going to be ugly, folks. I apologise. Right. So, you start with... I need some dots. You start with... You have two bobbins coming in from side, which you join together. Let me draw some... So you have these two bobbins, and let's say, for sake of the argument, they've come in from the side. So you're about to start here. You've got the same coming in from this side. So these two would come in normally to this point. But what actually happens is you join them at a point beforehand on each side. You then join... That's right, if you don't click right, it draws an extra bit. And you join that to there. That's right. And then... That's right, trying to work this out in my head. So you do the things. So that does that point. You then take... one of those to there, and that one to there, and one of those to there, and that one to there. You then take one of those to there, and one of those to there. Ignore the little spiky thing. And then one of these comes out to here, one of these comes out to here, one of these comes out to here, and one of these comes out to here. So, if I then, and then obviously that goes to there, that goes to there, that goes to there, that goes to there. So there is the course of the bobbins. So what you realistically have is you see, this is the square, and this is the circle within it. So if I go back to my screen, if you look incredibly carefully, and I really can't zoom in any further than that with this lens. I am contemplating buying another lens, but it's £240. If you look at, say, this square here, you can see there is the point, there's the other point, the bit you joined in the middle. Let me see if I can, I know what I can do. Hang on. Let me make this on my screen so I can see it. Right. I mean, they're quite big if you've got 4K screens, but if I zoom it up and then focus, right, you can see here. Let's pick this square because it's in a decent shape. Actually, I need a pokey stick. Hang on. I'll be back. Here we go. Right. Let's get back to focus. There we go. If you pick this square here, which is in a reasonable shape, trying to hold it still, there's the top of one side, there's the point where it came in the other, there it joined in the middle, you do the two sides and the bottom, and then you have the two outward points. So they are tiny, tiny little squares with circles in the middle. And I quite like this look because the squares, I like the squares and circles that appear inside a more fluid environment. And it's kind of almost a stark contrast. Even though you're working on a squared grid, the squares almost buck where the squares go. Because if I go back to my program, and I'll refocus the thing, if you look back at this as to how it's constructed, the squares go diagonally, and it kind of rounds itself off in the middle, hence it looks round. But the actual square that you see are the middle points, not the edge points of the square. So they're almost 45 degrees off, right? So I quite like how they work out because in this case, the grids are running kind of diagonally. If I go back to our triangle, in terms of being on my window kind of thing, let me zoom out. This could be the edge. Let me straighten my pillow. Hang on. Right. This long edge could be the edge of my curtain, right? Most of the threads are running it's one of those things is that there are 8 points to it, but it's not really a star because the middle bit forms a circle inside a square. So it's kind of a squircle. It's a bit of a squircle, but I do love them, and so hence they feature, funnily enough. I originally wanted to do the rose grounds at a different point. I wanted them to be in the middle, because there's another good reason to have them in the middle, because the points it's a squircle. The points would be at the place where the turn happens, so you wouldn't really notice the turn. But to be honest, I didn't like how that looked when I drew it up on my program, so I have settled on having this kind of strip of making the inners, because obviously it's made out of kind of a plus sign in the middle, an inner square, and then the outer to form the actual square. And so yes, it's kind of a square inside a square, but the square kind of rounds off a bit due to the nature of how threads work, so it looks a little bit more circular. And so it becomes, as you say, it's kind of a squircle, because it kind of, the detail slightly gets lost. Because as you say, the inner pit is square when all the pins are in. The moment you take the pins out, it goes more circular, so it is definitely a squircle. But despite all of it, while I've drawn that out, and it is a frankly spectacular impression of didn't need that line, get rid of that, of how you make and do the rose ground, and if I get rid of all the erroneous bits to leave exactly and only that which is needed. So you're fine. You need to go, and you need to go. So that's what you actually work on. What you get as a symbol is that, which is that centerpiece. All the rest is implied. So you do the whole stitch to the middle of this point to do that pin, and then that pin, and then you do the 4 in the middle, and then you do the last 2. And so that would be a fairer picture on the thing, because of course you're stabbing pins where pins don't go, but you don't pin the corners. So on this one, not that I can overly well highlight them, but if I select things and go this one, this one, this one, and this one, even though you do a stitch to join them together, and normally you would put a pin in, you do not pin that portion of the rose ground, which then means it can be a bit subject to tension issues. So hence, they only give you the pinholes, and the red dot is not a pinhole, it's just where the middle is. It just traditionally seems to come. Sometimes it does not have a dot. So this is the rose ground, and obviously because you've got to do a bit in the middle, you can't have them next to each other, so you end up with doing this. But if I group these and paste them, well, that doesn't look right. See, seriously, I copied and pasted the right thing, and it made a frigging munge of that. This is what I copied, and when I paste it, it fucked it up. No, there are no bugs with this software. Honest? Yeah, love. I'm not quite sure what to do if it's going to screw it up. Yeah, I keep reporting bugs to the lady who sells it. She doesn't write it. She can't explain it to the bloke the other end, and you're like, I'm sorry, but this is a bug. Oh, no, that's how it should be. Seriously, this goes against all known programming protocols and user interface design. This is frighteningly awful. It's like you don't do shift to add things, you do control, but you can't remove them. You can't. If you've selected something, that's it, you have to start again. So if you were highlighting 500 dots and you accidentally got one more than you wanted, you're now starting again. Friggin' annoying. I'll have to send her that one. But I was going to show how that then panned out, but obviously I'm not going to, so I can't. Because it's a bug, and I will be reporting it. And she will go, oh, I don't understand, I can't recreate that. Well, it's kind of a fresh copy of the app. I blocked in all the dots showing how a rose ground worked, copied and pasted it to show how it then joins with its friends, because obviously the next inner square goes here, so that these are the corners, to make this shape. So if this is that one, this would be, this square here would be that square here. So, and of course you can't see my mouse pointer. I don't know why you can't see my mouse pointer. I don't know how to do this. Hang on. So if this rose ground square here is this square here, the one that would be forming on these two pins is this one, if that makes sense. So they feed into each other, so you can't have them next to each other, hence they have to be spaced apart. Which can cause its own kind of complications. But we have a solution. I need to get on pricking the brown one. I need to get on winding new bobbins, because hopefully as soon as tomorrow we start again. I am quite pleased with that. I am pleased with my final output. I am indeed pleased with that. Let me see. If you look at the state of my cushion, you can't really see the state of my cushion. It doesn't show up. That's good. It looks like I've been cutting bread on my pillow.
Let me place that. I mean, there's a few dog hairs that I expected, right? If I do that, I'm going to take a photo of it. Believe me, it's straighter for me than it is for you. Straighten it up for you so it doesn't look quite so hopefully anyone with OCD isn't sitting there twitching away. 7 emails. Anyway, let's have a look. I need to take a photo of this because this will be my photo for the video. I might as well take it now while I'm doing it. There we go. Photo taken. Tessellation is definitely a thing, and one of the advantages you have is that because you don't need to pin your stuff, you can be a bit more creative with it. Whereas, now don't get me wrong, if you've seen some of the pictures of lace making, you can make rounded edges, pin and change pattern as it goes. But if you think of my diamond zigzag, if I was to try and make those perfect circles, it would be far too easy to not be perfect, even if you drew them with, a proper circle tool and everything. That the minor imperfections and slight differences in tension would make it look really, really rough. Now, some lace things, they do slightly different stitches. You're hammering in 2-inch nails. You see, that doesn't give. And as you may have noticed, many of my pins, she says trying to pick this one up, it's not having none of it. Hang on. Lick my finger because then things don't stick. Things stick a bit better. Because of course I threw them at and of course it's just made a leap for freedom. Let me slide it off my table and not into my keyboard. Ouch, that was my finger. One of the key problems I have in life, that is a pin. I bent it. These pins are so fine and made out of the tiniest of threads that frankly, you could weave with these things. I could do lace making with these pins. They're that thin and they bend so well. So they do annoy me a lot for that, an awful lot for that, to be honest. Just because it's an unnecessary. I mean, they didn't have to make them out of stuff quite so amenably bendable. It's a bit like the difference between making something out of tin and making something out of steel. The steel one is incredibly stronger. The tin one will bend just because you looked at it wrong. And I've got a feeling these pins are brass. Now, brass as a metal is usually considered to be heavy and quite strong. Not when it's this thin, it's not. So, but we are done for now. And maybe if I watch some crappy TV, I will be able to finish pricking my brown square to remind those. We have discovered that the green square, which is fairly traditional, but that tends to... Oh, piss off adverts. I seem to be really good at timing stuff for the adverts today. Why is this so wonky? Oh, it's because my camera's twisted. That's why. Let me sort that out. It's my camera that's wonky, not the mat. Here we go. Adverts suck. After all, I'm never going to be a millionaire. Come on, adverts, go away. Go away. Come on. This is the longest 90 seconds in living history.
years. Hooray! Ads are done. So, we learnt that the green stroke, very similar baby blue level card and white threads are not that visible when it comes to filming for streaming. Craft brown recycled paper is a lot more visible, is it not? Right? So I am halfway through pricking holes, which is why if you pay extreme attention, you might decide that one half, quickly checking it is, I was right, this half looks slightly lighter than this half. This is because I stab holes in all the little black dots in the bottom half. Therefore, even though light sinks into it, the light bounces slightly differently off the dots. So this will be my pattern for the actual making. We will see a lot of this pattern after all, hence it is laminated. And yes, it looks like I ate something out of a deep fat fryer and then played with it. I don't have particularly oily skin. In fact, I have quite the reverse. But I do hug my dogs a lot and I'm going to blame them. So they are a bit more oily. And of course, this then leads to slightly oilier finger marks around the edge that show up like Belisha beacons on camera. But as you can see, if I put that in its rightful place, that shows up so much better on camera. So we can look forward to the actual curtain mating. You'll be able to see when I've screwed up and laugh at me in more real time. It also means that should I zoom in, I know it's not pointing very well, but again, it is clearer for that. I mean, the focus isn't quite so great, but it doesn't autofocus, by the way, which is really annoying. But it is much clearer and you can see far better what's going on. So in some ways, getting to the end of this triangle, hating the spangles, gonna move to different bobbins, starting again. We can now start with brown pattern, bobbins that will still occasionally annoy me, but do not have spangles, so that part won't be annoying. And we can embrace the curtain to be. Now, as I said, we're going to make about 21 of these things, so it will be slightly repetitive. So, however, if you want to, I'm going to do a bit of the usual streamer shit because I don't normally do this. But if you'd like to support me, please subscribe because apparently I get like 5p for that. And if you follow, you will be notified when I go live. I obviously will be doing this for the best part of nearly a year. Now, I will preface that with, I am off from December the 5th to the 2nd of January. I would like to think I'm gonna do quite a lot during that time. So hopefully that'll cut it down a few weeks. So if you miss them, I keep these on Twitch as long as Twitch will let me. But I also then upload them to YouTube so that they will be there technically forevermore. So that my history of making this curtain will be visible. I have been semi-seriously asked by a friend, before I even started making my own, but I had already planned that I wanted one, to make one for them. So there may be 2 more lace curtains to go after we complete this one. So, because I will make me the whole one using the bolster cushion, and then depending on how that goes and what my friend potentially wants and whether they go ahead, of course, because they were offering to potentially offer monies for it, so they may change their mind when they see how long it takes, because, you know, if you only ask for 20 quid, you really are ripping yourself off. But we are in a position to go full steam ahead, and I am really actually quite excited, as you might be able to tell. My voice has now gone into full suicidal mode, because I am aware the happier I feel, the more depressed and suicidal I sound. I'm not quite sure how that works, but I remember as a child answering the phone, because my dad used to ring every time I got home from school to check I was still alive, and even though I was just about to leave from work and he'd be home in 20 minutes, but never mind. And I remember I missed answering the phone and the answer phone got it, so it recorded the whole conversation. and we had an answer phone where you had to play the whole thing before you could delete it. Oh my god. I knew that there was the Salvation Army suicide hotline kind of thing you can phone here in the UK, and I sounded like that was one of their callers, and I was so upset because I've been so excited and happy, and it was a real letdown. So I do not have a voice for radio. I do not have the face for video either. So I do look like my avatar. I'm just older and slightly more used than the avatar. But it is a fairly accurate representation. I'm wearing a beige jumper, I have glasses, long brown hair, and kind of green eyes. So it is vaguely representative as to my appearance. It's roughly the shape of my face and everything, just not actually me. You wouldn't recognise me from that, but you might pick me out of a given number of people having seen that. So I will be back. We have succeeded. There will be more, but I now have a lot of prep work to do before we can start the next one, because winding a big bunch of bobbins takes a while. Now we can wind some, and then I do a bit of work winding bobbins in meetings maybe, and then do some more, which may be a thing, so that I will start with enough bobbins to start this bit, and then do as many as I can, obviously. But because there are sections and order of sections, so let's say I get down to here, well, I've got to do at least those sections first. So we don't need all the bobbins at the start, but obviously the more I do, the better. I will have to pick my bobbins and stop procrastinating about picking my bobbins. Do I use my favourite bobbins, which are not so good on this kind of pillow and really bulky, or go for a slightly less bulky one that I won't hate as much, but not the Honiton ones because they were just annoying. So thinking the Danish bobbins, maybe the Majorcan bobbins, but they really are quite fat. But I like them because they're chunky. We shall see when I return. So I'm really sorry for those who are just coming in, because it looks like we have maybe had someone coming in the end. But to recap, we now have our completed triangle. We are happy with our triangle. We don't like the alternative stitch. It's not that we don't like it. I am not going to use it in my neck curtain. I will use it for something because I really do like it, but not this. So our neck curtain is going to have this ground stitch covering all of this plus sign in the middle. It's going to have my rose ground all the way around in those sections, and then the same ground on the outside, and we get to make 21 of them. Yeah, that's a lot of repetition, and as this has taken a couple of weeks, partly because we're on camera and the spangles and everything, it doesn't normally take this long. But potentially, worst case scenario, we have got a lot of weeks ahead of us, but we're at the start of a good new journey. So I leave you with the happiness is we have completed our triangle. We are very much decided of where we're going. The only thing I haven't decided on is my bobbins, and I kind of have. So I shall see you on the other side. See you soon.